Hey everyone, welcome to a new section in the cinematography course. We hope you have been enjoying the course so far, and this is a fun section on composition. Now that you know how to expose properly, an important part of cinematography is pointing your camera in the right direction and making sure the right things are in frame. And so I'm going to let Will talk a little bit more about what composition is and how to get great shots, but be prepared, another great section coming at you. So have fun and let's pass it to Will.
So welcome to a new section. We're going to talk about composition and what composition is, as well as how we're going to really change that up to really do what you're trying to do. So why is composition important and what it is? Composition is the way you compose your shot. So basically, what are you putting in front of your lens? Where are you putting the camera? And how are you framing it up? Are you putting someone to the left, to the right, to the middle? Are you wide? Are you close? Are you medium? It's really the frame that you have. Not necessarily the movement, but the frame that you have. You can have movement change your composition, but what exactly is your composition? You can see right here, Phil has kind of composed me in this shot. Because this is an interview, this is a good way to talk, you have things in the back. This is a well-composed shot for what he's trying to do. So, when you think about composition, you have to think about what are you trying to do? What are you trying to say with your frame? We're going to go through some shots and I'm going to show you how composition can really change the mood, what you're trying to say, and how you're saying it. The big thing about composition to me is that it really says a lot. A photo. Think about a photo and what a photograph says. Think about a close-up on the eyes versus a wide of a face. Those are saying two different things. And you want to make sure that for your project, for what you're shooting, your composition is saying what you want to say for the story, for the art, whatever it is you're trying to express, that your composition is really exemplifying that and showing that through the camera. So we're going to go over some basic shots. What I want to go over is a wide, medium, close, and extreme close-up, and then we'll kind of dive into what you can say within those shots. Those are the basic ways of shooting things, and you can kind of use that to communicate to people. So here, let's record with this camera right here. I have a C100 with a 24-70. We'll roll the camera here so Phil can cut in, and we can see that this is our first wide shot. There's not much information. It's a nice structure. We can see there's a cup on a table. It's really, wide shots are really great to really set the scene and understand exactly what you're doing. We're at 24, we're at a 2.8 so you can see, and you can really see the expansive storytelling of what's about to happen. Typically you can start with that shot. So let's go to a medium shot next. So we just zoomed in. I zoomed in to about between a 35 and a 50, and this is more of a medium shot. So you can see here, we see the cup as a medium shot where we're not really seeing the background, but we kind of see the whole of the subject. On a person, a medium would probably be more on what you're seeing with me right now. We'll show you some examples of a medium shot. With a person, you can kind of see it cuts off either around the waist or a little bit lower. In a two shot of two people, you can see where it cuts off at their waist, and that's sort of a medium two shot. So now let's look at our cup and let's do a close-up. So here I'm going to take our 24-70, I'm going to zoom all the way into 70. I'm actually going to move the cup just a little closer, and you can see here now, this is our close-up of the cup. You can see the cup is very expressive. Here you can see that we're pretty tight, we're pretty close up, and imagine if it's a person, it's going to be more tight like this, and you'll be able to really see what the person is expressing, what they're saying, and you can kind of get involved with really intimate space. Next, let's go into an extreme close-up. So this is an extreme close-up. You can see I'm really tight here on the cup now, and really you can kind of see the focus going in and out because we're really that close on the cup. Typically this is used for inserts of a pin or someone's eyes, really just to really get in there and get intimate and understand exactly what's going on. You can see all the little intricate movements and everything like that. Extreme close-ups are really fun. They're good for inserts. They're like when you see that key into the door or that guy breaking the lock that's coming in. They're really fun to cut away to. So those are the basic shots that you need to really cover a scene. The idea that you would use those shots to really make sure that you've got your structure for the editor to kind of get in and get what you need to cover a scene is great. Now within those shots, that's when you want to start to kind of play around and use your composition to say things. Now let's go back to the wide. You see I have a wide here of the cup. This was kind of our standard wide before, but now what happens if we pan all the way to the right, and let's tilt down a little bit, and now our cup is all the way on the left. It's a little rickety because it's tripod, but you can see they're all the way on the left. Now that frame says, that composition says a lot more than when it's centered, right? There's all this space on the right. It kind of seems lonely. it really says a lot more and really can kind of like, you can kind of see where the story comes up. Alternatively, if we zoom back into kind of our close-up and we did the same thing where we just cut off the cup maybe just halfway through, there's a famous shot of this in Ali movie with Will Smith where they cut just his face off like that, and there's a bunch of action going on the right side. Again, this is a little more interesting, a little more artsy, and it kind of says more to the person when they're looking at that frame. So you want to use your compositions in a way where you still want to cover the wide, medium, close, but you also want them to say something. This, again, I feel like the cup's a little lonely. We're kind of moving things to the side, so it says a little more. Something like a dock or a wedding or something might be fun to just see the bride just putting just the front of her face, putting on makeup and stuff, and maybe something in the background to say a little bit more than just centering them up. Centering them up isn't necessarily always going to say something, although it does have its moments. What if we tilt up and we just show the top? What's really fun about this is in a commercial now, if we're shooting a commercial, we have room to put graphics up above, right? So keep in mind when you're composing shots, if you need to do something or add something in post, you can always make room for that later, or you can kind of see that there's just this really sad little cup there and centered. I do like a lot of symmetrical things, more for commercial aspect, but it kind of depends again on what you're shooting, what you're trying to say, and how you want to say it with your compositions. Just remember that your composition can say a lot. So compositionally, something within your composition is changing the focus, or what's termed as rack focusing. So that's really focusing on one thing to the next, and it really plays to that aesthetic of cinema, of narrative film. I like seeing documentaries do this a lot too, but it really adjusts the focus and really literally changes the focus of what you're watching, which will lead the storyteller or lead the person watching the story in a direction that you want them to go in. This is awesome because this is like very particular. You are literally changing the focus of what they're looking at. And that has so many philosophical levels and different levels on what you're actually trying to do. So let's talk about how to do that effectively, technically. Usually best practices are to make sure you're using a lens that gives you that shallow depth and you're shooting wide open. Right now I have a C100, this is at 2.8, and I'm already zoomed all the way out, or all the way in to 70 millimeters. So that 70 millimeters and that 2.8 and the big chip on the C100 is allowing me that depth of focus or that shallowness where I'll be able to have something really in focus and a ton out of focus. So what I'm gonna do here is you can see I'm here on the blue solo cup, and I want to rack to something that's in the foreground because that's really what focusing is about. There's different planes of focus, and I really want to tell the story of how the blue cup is out there in the background, but the Starbucks cup is a little bit closer. So you can see how we're on the blue cup, and I just slowly change the focus to the foreground. It's like that's a nice rack, and it's really pretty, and like you can do that in a documentary, in a wedding, in a narrative, and you can see how it changed the look of it. Also, this lens doesn't tend to breathe a lot, so the zoom stays pretty good. This 24-70 is actually pretty impressive, but you can see how I can rack back and forth in telling a story. Now, if these were people, the Starbucks cup could be facing us, not even knowing that the killer behind them is this blue cup. So we would start on the face in front of us, and then we can rack to the killer behind, and that tells like it's a big moment in the story, it's a big thing. In a documentary or in a wedding, if there's a first look and the groom is looking at us and the bride is walking up towards us, we can rack to that, and we can rack to their reaction as she comes up and anticipation for the first look. So really there's a lot of different levels that you can use rack focusing at. It just kind of depends on, again, what you're shooting and how you use it, but the best way to do it is long lens, wide open, and big depth between the subject and the other subject in the focus plane. So let me talk about some tips for composing different shots. First, with narrative. Narrative is very interesting because as a cinematographer, you're going to be working with the director to kind of figure out generally how you want to compose a shot and how you want to tell a story. I tend to err things on close shots as well as a lot of negative space. For me, negative space says a lot. And I love shooting in the aspect ratio. Something about composition is that you got to decide which aspect ratio you're shooting in. There's 16:9, there's 2:3:5, there's 1:8:5, there's 4:3 if you really want to get old school and go do that box. But within the composition that you're going to be shooting, you have to decide what your aspect ratio is going to be, how you're going to position people left or right. Something to think about in movies would say the movie Hulk. they didn't tend to shoot that in the nice wide Saving Private Ryan 2:3:5 aspect ratio. They shot it in 1:8:5, which is a little taller. Why? Because their subject Hulk is taller than he is wider. So they wanted to be able to show everything as much as they could. Same with Godzilla. They shoot that in a bigger frame as opposed to a smaller frame because they want to be able to tell the story with their subject here. So big tip for narrative is to figure out what you're shooting and how you're going to shoot that. If you're in tiny spaces, chances are your compositions you don't want to be really wide. You're probably going to have them be smaller and you're going to have them more condensed. People are going to be closer. If you're shooting a movie about someone who's all by themselves and they're walking on a road trip, you're probably going to want to shoot with lots of wide lenses, right? Because then they're going to be alone, they're going to be small in frame, and they're really going to be speaking to what the movie's about. Again, with everything else, find out what your project is, what emotion you're trying to equate, and what kind of framing and composition equates to that emotion specifically. Being alone lends itself to wide lenses, of course, but being intimate and close and having a loving relationship might end up being much tighter compositions, two people's face-to-face, says a lot, you get intimate. So those are, I think, the best tips for narrative, is to find out what you're trying to say and translate a word or a phrase of what you're trying to say into how that's expressed through a shot or through a composition. That, added with maybe some movement, which we can talk about later, will really come out, and then you add in the lighting and you got a really awesome movie, all based off of what your composition is going to start with. So compositionally, we talked about narrative. Now let's talk about doc or events. It's a little hard to kind of focus more on docs compositions because a lot of times you're just running and gunning. My favorite thing with docs and events is that when you do interviews, you can really mess with the composition. I've seen some really cool documentary interviews where they might have two cameras going and you see one camera really tight on the lens and you can see the emotion if they're interviewing them about something really touching, and then they have like a wide standard. Alternatively, in a doc, you tend to be running around with a camera on your shoulder. The fun thing about documentary is that you're really just looking at what's around you, right? Remember I talked earlier about paying attention to everything around you and working with what's in front of you. The cool thing about docs is you can take your camera and put it on the ground and shoot a soccer ball going by, or you can be running with a kid and trying to get him centered in frame. I think the big thing about documentaries is there's this tend to go towards just news gathering and keeping the camera on your shoulder. Now you want to, with docs, you're trying to express something, you're trying to present something in a certain manner. So you want to take that camera and take it off where we normally look, right? We're normally looking around with our eyes like this. The big thing to make things look different is to take your vision and move it somewhere else. So for a documentary, maybe take your vision and put it down on the floor, put it high up, put a GoPro in a car where you wouldn't normally see a camera. The big thing is to just put the camera where you wouldn't normally have your natural eyes. If I'm sitting here and I want to shoot myself, the camera's directly at my eye level because we're doing an interview and we're doing information. But if this was more intense, more emotional, and I wanted to make myself look big, we might put the camera on the floor so I can be looking down on it. Or if you wanted to make me look small and talking up, we might move the camera to high up. Somewhere where your eyes are not typically, because that's what's going to create that aesthetic, that's what's going to create that magic. So for a doc, put the camera and compose shots where you wouldn't normally see things from. I think the other thing with docs is to really just understand that it's in the moment and you have to be rushing and quickly doing it. And typically you don't want it to look like a news thing, so shoot on a longer lens. Try to make it look like a narrative as much as possible, even though you're running or gunning. If you try to push yourself to make your doc look more like a cinema movie, and use the tools that I was talking about with narratives, like rack focusing, like 24 frames per second, like high-speed stuff. If you make your doc look more like a movie, people will be touched more and they will feel more because they'll be in that mode of, this is going to make me feel more, as opposed to just watching the news. So Caleb's going through some shooting in the next couple weeks, and I just wanted to give him a couple tips. If he wanted to have any questions or any concerns about what he's shooting, just wanted to see if he had a couple questions maybe we could help you out with. So,
So one of the things I'm going to be doing is running and gunning a lot. So I wanted to set up a shot where, you know, I have no lights, no nothing, it's natural lighting. What's the best thing I can do? Like, how do I expose right for what I'm going for?
Well, if you're not able to see the place that you're in beforehand, I would just go in there. I would turn your camera on immediately when you start talking to people, just so you can start to see what the exposure is going to look like, so you can kind of test it. Set your ISO. and then just kind of try and set your settings as fast as you can. I know you want to make your stuff look really pretty and aesthetically beautiful and stuff, so you're going to try and shoot at a 2.8, right? So go in there already knowing what frame rate and what resolution you're going to have, right? So you already have that set. You'll go in there, you'll look at the light, set your white balance immediately, and then open up to a 2.8 and a 4 and see if there's too much light, add your ND, and you should be able to do that all within 3 or 4 minutes, if that. You should be able to do that in like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So once you get that going, then you can start to like relax and just know that your exposure will be fine. Turn your zebras and peaking on so you know. I think the hardest thing would be is if you're indoors.
Okay.
That might be a little harder to do because there might not be a lot of light. But aside from that, just go in there, get those settings really quick, and then try to start looking around and just start shooting.
That sounds good. So let me ask you a different question. Let's take it indoors. Okay. So when I'm inside, let's say I don't have that much light. I know, what is the native ISO for FS7? It's you said it was.
I'm not totally sure the native ISO is. I believe it's 1600 or 2000. Okay. If you're going to be walking into an indoor situation and you know that, and it's at night or during the day, chances are they'll have tungsten bulbs where you're going. So set your thing to 3200 before you walk in. I would previously set your low, medium, and high ISOs to a little bit higher than you normally have been shooting with, right? Okay. Maybe start with your low at 1600 and then do 2000 and then do 3200 or something like that. Because if you already know you're going to walk into a really dark situation, you'll already be ready to go and you won't have to mess with that too much. Aside from that, yeah, same thing. Go in with as many settings as you can set, and then when you get in there, adjust within a minute or two so you can kind of just see and poke your head around and figure it out so you can relax and then concentrate on your compositions and what you're going to shoot and what's going on around you.
So I'm going to be shooting a lot of people running around. I'm going to be following a lot of kids, so I'm imagining they're going to be like waist high, so I'm imagining I'm going to be shooting like this. What are some tips and advice you can give me about like how to compose really nice?
That's going to be fun. You're going to be running around a lot, so you're probably going to be handheld. It's great with the FS7 because you can hold it lower with this and move your monitor up. I think the best thing for you would be maybe think about shooting at a higher frame rate so you can capture what they're doing in a more fun way. The fun thing about the 60 frames per second is that you can always move it to 24 if you need to, and it'll have a little bit of a weird look, but I think you can accomplish more and you'll nail stuff faster, right? The other thing is to just be wary of your focus. On the 24 to 70, there is like a little feet counter, so try and judge the feet you're at. Sometimes you won't have time to do that. So again, down low where they are, be on their level because you're experiencing what they're experiencing, and just try to move with them. I feel like that's the best thing to do. Move with them and play with the rack focusing and try and put things in the foreground elements. It's really fun to see kids moving around with something in front. And then if you're going to be handheld, stay handheld. If you're going to be on sticks, try and stay on sticks. I think with kids moving around a lot, you don't want to be jumping from one or the other. You want to pick one look or the other. Chances are I would be moving around because that's just more fluid, it's more kids, it's more like that. And then try and just get your mindset of them. That's what I would do. I would get in the mindset of them and put the camera where you think would exemplify what they're doing. If they're playing soccer and running around, get low and get to the ground and see the ball go by. Run along with their feet. Like just get inserts of what they're doing and close-ups of their face. Maybe get a couple wides just so you have them, but it sounds like it's a lot of insert-y stuff that's going to look really pretty. Foreground elements, give them some space. When you're close, that might look fun. So yeah, you just have to feel it out, but it sounds like it's going to be a really cool shoot.
Yeah, hopefully it is. So.
Sweet.